webinar. These webinars are really designed to primarily focus, to give you a better appreciation of the human body and how it functions. That is our goal, probably more than anything else. Yes, we do talk about nutrition. Yes, we do talk about supplements. Yes, we do talk about the latest, greatest technology that is out there. But the human body never changes. And as General Patton says, tanks and weapons come and go. But the greatest war weapon is the soldier, the man, the fighting man. In the same way, the greatest defense against sickness and disease is really a well-functioning human body, and that is our focus as always. And we'll be talking more and more about how to release the potential that we have in our bodies. And of course, we can't do without nutrition and of these technologies we talk about. But I think it makes a lot more sense when you understand how your body functions, what it needs to function, and how and the threats against it. But if you understand how the human body functions, it just makes it easier for you to accept the role of supplements, the role of nutrition, the role of exercise, and why you need to protect it. So again, as always, this is our focus. So the question is, why the endocrine system? Why study about the endocrine system? And really, Steve, I was looking at this last week, and we did a class on the cardiovascular system. And as we talked about how blood pressure, for instance, is maintained, and we drew this simple diagram, and right up there, of course, is the brain that gets impulses and responds to impulses. But we also mentioned that a lot of the information that comes to the brain to enable it to regulate blood pressure also has to do with the endocrine system, because the messages, the signals have to get to the brain by way of these chemicals we call hormones. So basically, as I was thinking about it, I realized that the pattern was beginning to emerge. We had in our class on the human brain, we talked about how the brain, of course, receives impulses. A lot of those impulses and information come through hormones. A lot of the responses to the input that the brain has is through hormones as well as neurotransmitters. So, and then, of course, we talked about the immune system, or what the immune system does, and we have in our CDR class on the battle within, we talked about how the immune system is a fighting force, an intelligent force. But at the same time, the immune system is also regulated by hormones. And believe it or not, the immune system does secrete hormones to communicate with themselves and to communicate with the brain. And so the pattern just kept on growing. And then, of course, in our class on fat loss, we spoke about the master hormone of fat called leptin and how that regulates and forces or keeps your weight at a constant level because of that hormone called leptin. And, of course, we talked about the relationship between leptin and insulin. Both of them are hormones. When it comes to aging, we talked about aging too in our class on aging. And, of course, one of the key things that cause us to age is a declining endocrine system. So over and over and over again, in our class on antioxidants too, it was about the endocrine system plays a huge role. I mean, estradiol, which is an estrogen, is one of the most powerful antioxidants in the human body that the human body itself produces. And we know that estrogen diminishes as we grow older, and that they have been able to prove that is why, especially in ladies, you have memory problems, hot flashes, and things like that because of a lack of a diminishing defense against the attacks of free radicals. And of course, free radical damage is one of the things that sets off the inflammatory process, leading to chronic inflammation, which really is one of the top reasons why people grow old and die. As a matter of fact, 90% of all heart disease starts with inflammation. And inflammation is not just a joint problem, it's a problem that affects all the cells in your body. Again, inflammation is mediated by hormones. And Dr. what's his name, Barry Sears talks about hormones and how the perfect storm is what sets you up for chronic inflammation. He talks about these special hormones called eicosanoids. Of course, insulin, corticosteroids are all hormones. So really, the inflammatory process that is wreaking havoc on the human race is as a result of an imbalance of hormones. So therefore, it just made sense that we have a class on the endocrine system, just so people can, in one class, in one presentation, be able to see the core things that make the endocrine system works, and then, of course, be able to relate how the other factors like heart disease and cancer can all play a part. And so that's kind of like why we decided to do this. And here's a really great quote that speaks, kind of like encapsulates the way the human body functions. For the human body, any organism, or for the human body or any organism for that matter to survive and indeed thrive in this hostile, toxic world, all its far-flung parts must be in constant communication with one another over long distances as well as locally. This is accomplished by messages sent via nerves, nervous system, in the form of electrical energy we call impulses, via the bloodstream in the form of the chemicals we call hormones, and to nearby groups of cells via the specialized substances we call local signaling molecules. And that in encapsulation is really how our bodies are regulated and controlled on a day-to-day basis, and we have them all summarized here. So the endocrine system does play that key role, and of course we show this picture about how impulses are transmitted in the nervous system via what are known as neurotransmitters, and they work a lot faster than through chemical signals called hormones. As a matter of fact, some hormones can actually work on the nucleus, and they take their effects last for months and years. In some cases. So basically, again, we're going to look at the endocrine system, and there you see it plays a key role, a central role in the whole, what we call the PNI, the central governing system of the human body. The central governing system of the human body. And of course, I know Dr. Steve, you talk a lot about the cardiovascular system and the new research that we're seeing coming out about how the heart, for instance, is also an endocrine organ. It's also has nervous tissue and therefore sends nervous impulses, and it does a couple of other things that it does. So really, it's in a way, the heart as a whole actually encapsulates this system, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and I think about this technology that we talked about, the heart math technology gives biofeedback, and as a chiropractor, these things that you're talking about from a central nervous system, brain and spinal cord, it's all about connections and it's all about balance. And so as a chiropractor, we look at not only postural balance, but also, and that's structural. We know that structure plays this role in how we function. If a person's got a scoliosis, they're not going to function very well. And if a person's got joint imbalance, they're going to have problems with that joint function. So structure affects function there. It also occurs down to the cellular level as well. And that's really where health takes place, is in the cells, in the molecules that we actually put in the body, but also the molecules that our body can create. And it's the mind-body-spirit connection there. And so, it's like chicken or the egg. It doesn't really start one place. It's just a circular, like you've got on the chart here. It's a circular process. And so it's all about creating that balance from an emotional standpoint, spiritual standpoint, physical, biochemical from a nutritional standpoint. So yeah, that's a great introduction to this system, this neuroendocrine system that can be quite complex, but I like your style.
Thanks. Well, at the end of this webinar, an hour and a half or so, we will be able to say, along with Darth Vader, that the circle is now complete.
Yeah.
So something like that. All right, the endocrine system. There are about 9 organs specifically devoted to the endocrine system. And, of course, we actually have a handout, folks, available on the website. It's free for you. It talks about the major hormones, their location in the body, the location of the glands, in the body that secrete them, and what those hormones do. And it's free. You can just go there anytime and just download it. It's just one page anyway. But we try to put them all together in one. So the endocrine system consists of about 9 organs.
Hey, David.
Yes.
Tell them where it is. It's on the home page.
Right. It's on the home page. Thanks. On the home page. You don't have to dig too far. Okay. So there are about 9 organs that are devoted to the endocrine system. They are devoted to secreting hormones. But that's not it, folks. That's not all, folks. There are about 200 different hormones in the body, and many, many, many cells in your body actually secrete hormones. We mentioned the endocrine system secretes hormones. The nervous system secretes hormones. But we know fat cells, intestinal cells, the stomach secretes hormones. So several different organs in the body also secrete hormones because constant communication is a must for you to be alive, and therefore the cells must be able to communicate well. And one of the functions of the endocrine system, of course, we have sex drive, and of course metabolism, growth, development, reaction to stress, responses to stress, even your moods, even your intellectual capacity is all affected by the endocrine system. So there are several other things, and we, of course, we mentioned growth and the metabolism, and of course your sex drive. Wait a minute, have I mentioned that already?
You usually mention it.
Okay. Oh boy, I'm going to get in trouble here. But anyway, it does play a huge role. Apparently, lots of people are very, very concerned about it. 16 to 17 million people use that drug every single year. We just mentioned, of course, that several cells in the body secrete hormones, and this is just an example of how this happens. Blood glucose is probably a very, very good example on how the different cells play parts in the regulation of blood glucose. Of course, the muscle cells, which are not endocrine organs, neither are the fat cells or the intestines. The pancreas is an endocrine organ, but the liver is not. But all these organs secrete hormones that regulate either increase or decrease the level of glucose in the blood. And of course, glucose is essential for the production of energy, especially for your brain. The brain is just about 2% of your weight, but it takes about 20% of the nutrients that come into the body. It absolutely needs a lot of glucose for its energy supply. But of course, balance is the key. Balance is the key. We talk about pH levels. We talk about the good bacteria to bad bacteria. We talk about inflammatory cytokines to anti-inflammatory cytokines. Everything in life is a balance, and of course the endocrine system is one of the key things that play that role in balance. I don't really believe this is a real picture because I don't think anybody can walk on a tightrope with shoes. But anyway, why is this thing still here? Let's talk about hormones. There are two categories of hormones. We can classify them in two ways, either by their structure or by their function. And we're going to look at those two real quick. There are about 3 different types of hormones by structure. We have the steroid hormones, which, of course, testosterone, estrogen, steroid hormones, in addition to aldosterone and a few other hormones. These work a lot longer, and they take a lot longer time in their function than the other two. Amino acids, which are like proteins. Epinephrine, norepinephrine, those are things that they're flight or fight hormones. They get you kick-started. They're like stress hormones. They get you moving. Peptide hormones like insulin. This is actually the most abundant group in the list of hormones. So, like you know, proteins are vital for your body functions. By function, we have the sex hormones, the metabolic hormones like the thyroid hormones, which boost your metabolism, and then there are other hormones that actually diminish your metabolism. Regulatory hormones. Quick point on melatonin. This is secreted by a gland called the pineal gland in the brain. Again, there's a handout on the website that illustrates all this. The melatonin is extremely important. It regulates your sleep habits. It comes on at night when things go dark. It is extremely important for repair and regeneration. When we go to sleep, our body doesn't necessarily go to sleep. The body is working overtime to repair the damage that's happened during the day. Melatonin plays a huge role in that. It's also a very, very powerful antioxidant. So it helps to repair, like I said, and regenerate the body. One thing is certain that we know is that people who work night shifts, the graveyard shift, another name for that, the graveyard shift, they have a much higher incidence of cancer than people who work not regular hours. Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
Much higher incidence of cancer, and that's because they're not. One of the reasons is that melatonin isn't secreted as much, and therefore people that night period, usually 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., are the hours of maximum regeneration and repair, and that's when melatonin. Excuse me.
So it's not the same to sleep during the day.
It is not the same to sleep during the day. No, not at all. Not at all. Because another thing with sleeping during the day is that most times you don't have access to that complete darkness, total darkness that you probably would have at nighttime when there's normal time for people to sleep. So people who work graveyard shifts have to be aware of this, and therefore have to be able to supplement with some really powerful antioxidants. The stress hormones like cortisol, norepinephrine, we mentioned that, inflammation. Icosanoids, I've tried to learn how to pronounce that, but inflammation, again, we do have a webinar on inflammation, and we're really going into detail into how inflammation damages the body. Again, there are hormones that increase inflammation, there are hormones that diminish inflammation. From what we see, most Americans especially, because of the diet and because of the lifestyle, have much, much more of the hormones that increase inflammation. And here are some key hormones that we're talking about. Remember, we said we have about 200 different kinds, so this is just a snapshot. These are some of the most important that really regulate the activities of the other hormones in the body. Dr. Steve, do you guys deal with hormones in your practice? And I know you deal with the mind relaxation techniques and all that, but do you ever have to look at how hormones act in the body?
Yeah, we do. And one of the things that I like, in fact, Marla Algrim, she and John Kells won 3 NIH grants on the saliva test for hormonal balance. Oftentimes we think about hormones, measuring them in the blood, but it's not intracellular hormones that you're measuring. It's the ones outside the hormones. You want to measure what's getting inside the cells, and so they have a laboratory called Aeron, AERON labs, and so we do hormonal testing to look at the balance of hormones, and so I can definitely go right along with everything you're saying here from a night worker standpoint. And it was amazing to me how much melatonin, how anti-cancer melatonin was from an antioxidant standpoint. But also we know that typically it's a stressful situation to be working at odd hours, and so that's where it also depletes the immune system. And so you've got all these factors that are it's like a domino effect. One thing goes down, it affects the other thing, and affects the other thing. And so I'm just now learning more and more about the leptins in terms of how they actually change the structure of some of these brain cells, and that we actually can decrease our appetite, our cravings. Some people think, gee, how can I stop craving these particular foods? Well, it's because they're getting leptin resistant, and their fat cells are producing leptins at such a high rate, and their brain's not reading this, it's not hearing what their fat cells are saying. So you can eat and it's a survival mode, and you can't override a survival gene. You're going to eat whether you just ate 2 hours ago or not, because if your brain and your endocrine system is out of balance, and you're leptin resistant, usually you're insulin resistant as well, and so that just keeps on going up. Your metabolism then slows down because the thrifty gene kicks in, and so it's like just the opposite of what we want, and so powerful. Right.
And the thing, folks, is not to depress people that there's no hope, that this is not. Once we get into this point where we're leptin resistant or insulin resistant, that's it. The thing, we're trying not to depress you, but to impress upon you that you have a part to play. We can use drugs, we can use surgery to reduce fat in the body, to remove excess body weight, but because of the hormonal resetting, so to speak, of your endocrine system and of your body, there are certain things that your body has now begun reset to, and therefore the only way to actually reset it back to normal, where your body works with you in maintaining a healthy body weight, is really to work through your body. And the way you work through your body is also understanding what your body needs to function at its best, and hormones play a key role. And yes, that's really interesting with the leptin thing. Insulin, too, is really becoming a key factor in many diseases. As a matter of fact, I call it the mother of all diseases, because it just affects practically everything. Insulin is one of the most primitive of all hormones. They found it to be present in every living organism, including the unicellular or one-cell organisms. They find that insulin plays a role there. So it is a master hormone in my books, from what I can see, and therefore, like we said, researchers now are beginning to see the role insulin plays in heart disease, in cancer, and things like polycystic ovarian disease. It's amazing what's out there. All right, let's talk about a few of these hormones. Of course, we can't cover everything right now, but let's talk about the sex hormones. What we're finding out, folks, is that sex hormones play a huge role, not just in development of sexual characteristics, but really in the growth and development and normal function of the human body. Quick example. Estrogen is responsible for strong bones. Testosterone is responsible for strong, bulky muscles. And here you see a graph. And let me just quickly explain what this means. Estrogen, as we grow older, this is 0 years. This is the first year of life, and the yellow part, of course, is testosterone. This from here back here, this is at birth. So everything before birth is during the pregnancy stage, and of course you see the shoot, the surge in testosterone and surge in estrogen. When these surges happen in the baby, those are what set the characteristics, whether the child is going to be a male or a child is going to be a female. It's all a question of the testosterone, but let's not talk about that. What I want to really focus on is from 0 to about 70 years of age, we see that testosterone, the yellow part, stays really at its peak is in the 20s, and then it's kind of like stays at a high level until the 50s and 60s. Estrogen is not so. Estrogen kind of peaks at 20s, 30s, and into mid-30s, and then it begins a sharp decline till when you're into your 50s. And that they find out that osteoporosis begins to occur when you turn your 60s and afterwards, because primarily of the decline in estrogen. Of course, there's a decline in testosterone too. But this is for the males. The yellow is for the males, and then the green is for the females. But both men and women have both sex hormones. As a matter of fact, we all have the same kind of hormones. The difference is in the balance and the levels. Obviously, ladies have a lot more estrogen than men do.
And Dr.
Okay.
David,
Yes, sir.
David, one of the things that Dr. Lee, who wrote a book, and I was trained in exactly the same way, and so I'm going to maybe diverge a little bit, but I don't want to go too much on this, but just maybe make your audience aware that the balance with the kind of counterbalancing hormone is the progesterone, which typically drops off the charts at about 35 years of age because it's the progestational hormone. And when we start studying bone density, oftentimes we start seeing when there's an imbalance, particularly in the estrogen and progesterone, that we start seeing bone density start dropping off if there's that imbalance at 35. And you're right about the estrogen, especially when you start getting into the menopausal time, but bone density oftentimes starts declining before the estrogen goes down. And when you think about the osteoblast that produces new bone cells, that's a progesterone function. And so this is some relatively new stuff, but Dr. Lee has been working in this area for quite some time. So it's very fascinating because I think a lot of us have been trained exactly like this. So that's a fascinating area that definitely worth studying, and I think that's one of the reasons why when you start looking at bone density studies, oftentimes you'll see, I think one of the key top 2 or 3 factors is hormonal balance, particularly the estrogen dominant syndrome that typically occurs. But when you start balancing it out with progesterone, and again, Marla Algrimes talks about this in her the HRT solution, the hormone therapy replacement solution. And she's a compounding pharmacist, and she really focuses on keeping that balance in there. And oftentimes, like I say, about 35 years of age, that progesterone just drops off the charts.
Mm-hmm. Now, Dr. Steve, you mentioned a couple of books there. Could you possibly type them in the chat box so people can see the books that you mentioned, just in case they might want to go pick those books up?
Yep. Okay,
great, thanks. This is good stuff. I'm so glad I invited you on the show with me tonight, because I don't think I'd have done as good a job. But folks, here what we're trying to say, folks, and this isn't this is not to depress people, but the truth is there are cultures all over the world where those levels, let me go back, those levels that we just spoke about actually are maintained at a much higher level. For instance, estrogen in some cultures in the world, I can think of some in South America now, that the estrogen levels really stay much higher. As a matter of fact, you don't see the steep decline that you see in Western cultures. They're maintained, and a lot of that has to do with their culture, their lifestyle, what they put in their bodies, their social interactions. You remember in the United States, we're more of an individualistic culture where everybody does his own thing and sticks to himself. The cultures in other cultures where there's a communal, more collectivist society, people support each other, and that social bonding, so to speak, really is great for the endocrine system. It's great for the mind. It's great for the emotions, and it keeps those hormones at a higher and a good balance. Because again, it's not just enough to have a high level. It's important to have the good balance. And we're going to talk about that some more. Again, this is for ladies. Unfortunately, folks, when you get to be about 40, you have half the level of testosterone that you had in your 20s. Now, remember, testosterone, ladies have testosterone too, and it's very, very important for testosterone is what helps you build muscle. Why is muscle important? Because muscle is what helps burn fat. Fat burning is extremely important, an important factor to keep your leptin levels down and to reduce inflammation. They found out that the more fat you have in your body, the more free radical damage you have in your body, and the more inflammation you're going to have in your body. Inflammation is not good, especially for your heart and your brain. And so, therefore, it is really good to have a certain body fat to muscle ratio. Is that BMI? No.
Yeah.
What's the term? Is it BMI, right?
Yes.
Dr. Steve, what's a healthy BMI for ladies in their 40s?
That's a good question. I don't have the charts right in front of me, but I know we do a lot of infrared testing, and BMIs are good generic ways of catching that, but it doesn't typically consider body typing, morphology. Doesn't consider athletic builds and that sort of thing. 'Cause a lot of athletes, both women and men, the BMI will show that they're in an overweight or obese category when it doesn't really take into consideration percentage body fat, which we all know that's the most important thing.
Right. Okay, well, a healthy BMI is very, very important. I know anything over 30 is obese, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. There's a lot of this been said about growth hormone, folks, and there's more and more research coming out now about growth hormone and what it can do to help you keep your skin fresh, your body strong, your bones strong, your muscles taut and He-Man-like, and all that. Again, growth hormone is very, very it plays a huge role in that anti-aging process. And again, you can see that in your 20s, again, the mid-20s, that's the miracle time when you're Superman, you're bulletproof, you're invincible. At least you tend to think you are when you're at that age. You sometimes act like you are. But that's the peak, and it begins to decline for most people till their 70s. In fact, by 65, they say some people actually don't even secrete growth hormone at all. So there's this rage now about growth hormone supplements, and everybody's rushing to look younger. That whole that search for the eternal fountain of youth. The problem with many of these growth hormone pills is that some of them could actually, because first thing, growth hormone actually stimulates the growth of every cell. That's what growth hormone does. And so if you use it indiscriminately, it could, and that's what the fear some people have is that it could, if you have latent tumors or latent cancers, it could aid the proliferation of those tumors and growth of those tumors. Some good researchers have come up with a way by which your body can naturally increase its own production of growth hormone. And that is what you should look for. You don't want to just haphazardly, arbitrarily just pop growth hormone pills in your body. Dr. Steve, you want to say something about that?
I'm actually trying to get the BMI information on the question,
okay.
and also those two books. So,
hey, David and Steve, somebody just typed in for us the World Health Organization following measures for normal weight and obesity. So I'll send that out to everybody through the little chat box.
Okay, that wouldn't be somebody we know, is it? Okay. All right, I'll keep going. Weight gain, that's what everybody's concerned about, the battle of the bulge. Real quick, hormones play a huge role here. 45 million people, including 31% of American women and 20% of our children, now meet the standards for obesity, which means they have BMIs over 30% or 30, 65% more overweight. That is not good. We have a list of good hormones here, and we go into this in detail in our fat loss programs. But these hormones, along with the quote-unquote bad hormones, regulate the level of fat in the body and your appetite. And we talked about leptin, about how if the leptin is directly correlated, directly proportional to the level of fat in the body. So as fat levels go up, your leptin levels go up, and your leptin initially tries to regulate the amount of appetite, the appetite you have, and keep you from going to the junk food, going to gorge on food and processed foods. But if that is denied, if that is ignored, we now know that once your brain or you ignore the signals from your body to tell you to stop eating, that the leptin continues to increase and increase and increase, and eventually it comes to a level when your brain accepts high levels of leptin as normal, and therefore you begin to just crave food, and you get hungrier and hotter, and eventually you become quite fat and unhappy. And again, the hormone leptin plays a key role in that. Let's talk about stress. And again, Dr. Steve does a lot of work on stress and does a lot of teaching on mind-centering techniques with the heart math, and really fascinating stuff that he talks about. I think we do have one of his classes on in MP3 format and slides that go along with it. But the thing about stress is that your body is also primed to take care of emergencies, and we call it the flight or fight mechanism. And of course, there's the freeze mechanism, where you do neither. You just stay put. You're just petrified. I guess that's where they got the word petrified from. You're like a stone, a rock. That's what petros means, petrified. And that's when your systems, your fight systems, just go into overdrive, and you can't do anything. You're frozen. And basically, again, that has to do with hormones. Now, here's the problem. This was only meant to be a temporary, transitory thing. Like, for instance, in the old days when you had to run away from the saber-toothed tiger. I mean, you only run away for about 30 seconds, and then it's either the tiger's eating you up or you're hiding in a cave somewhere. It was not meant, you were not meant to have those hormones coursing through your system indefinitely. Unfortunately, for most Americans, that is the case. Because of this high amount of stress, we're in a financial situation now, and people are losing their retirement, they're losing their income, they're losing their jobs. I was at Starbucks the other day, and they were recruiting and interviewing for jobs. I was shocked, folks. I was totally shocked at the number of people in their 50s who are applying for jobs as baristas. as baristas, folks. These were those jobs that they were applying for or interviewing for were jobs for kids who just leave high school and looking for a job to do, or people in high school. I was shocked at the number. So there is, in other words, folks, there's a high level of stress in the environment, especially in this country today. And so I guarantee you that these people have high levels of stress hormones in their body. And in the notes that you're going to get soon, I actually spent hours preparing these notes. But I didn't have the bibliography in place, and since we want to do everything right, we decided to hold off for a while, and probably you get the notes before the weekend is over. And bottom line, we now know that these hormones can have some devastating effects on the immune system, on your bones. Depression, for instance, causes bone destruction and osteoporosis. And what happens in depression is that there's a lot of stress hormones that are coursing through your system and being released. So this response is not a good response, and you need to stay away from it as much as possible. Again, mind-centering, religion, being involved in a good family, social environment, having a job that is matched to your skills and talents and your gifts. All those play a huge role in helping to aid your health. This was shocking when I saw this. Chronic stress halts the body's natural DNA repairing system. Think about that. And that can potentially lead to the development of cancers. We know that cancers start with damage to DNA. Chronic stress does that? Well, you better believe it. I was talking with Dr. Siegel a while back, and he was talking about even loneliness. They're finding out that people who are lonely over long periods of time actually have damage to their DNAs. So all these so-called soft sciences that people have poo-pooed on, they're beginning to realize that they actually play a huge role. I mean, the fact that we can't measure happiness or peace does not mean that it is not having an organic effect on the body. And I alluded to this earlier, but the root of all evil, what we've found out is that this hormone right here, insulin, is the research that is out there on insulin is just exploding. There's a doctor by the name of Dr. Ron Rosedale, who is one of the pioneers in the research on insulin. And it is amazing what this single hormone, the damage it can do. And when you think about insulin, folks, you think about diabetes, of course. And then we think, well, it's either in people with diabetes mellitus, it's either that they are not secreting enough insulin, or their pancreas is shot, which is the type 1, or their body is insensitive, their muscles, their tissues are insensitive to insulin, and therefore drugs are given to either increase the amount of insulin in the body or to increase the sensitivity. But whatever the case may be, they're finding out that people with diabetes, even people with cardiovascular disease, people with cancer, people with stress, they are finding out that these people have high levels of insulin, which they are finding out is a root cause of many of the damage that we see today. Insulin, high levels of insulin, what Dr. Ron Rosedale has been doing is that he's been focusing on the hyperinsulinemia. Hyper means a lot of insulin. Hyper means a lot. Insulinemia means insulin in the blood. He's focused not on the disease as much as he has focused on the levels of insulin. He has focused on bringing them down. What he has found out is that when he brings that levels of insulin down, many of the symptoms tend to abate. And so, unfortunately, we have not been trained to look at insulin as a problem. In diabetes, for instance, we look at high levels of blood glucose, and we attack that high level of blood glucose, and we try as much as possible to bring it down, which is correct. But we tend to neglect the other factor, which is insulin. And there are ways to reduce insulin. Again, stress, they found out that stress has a very strong correlation with insulin levels. We also know that cancers actually have to thrive on hormones to function. Some breast cancers, some uterine and ovarian cancers, because of over-secretion of certain hormones, which make the tissues proliferate. Estrogen, for instance, helps tissues to proliferate. Now, there's a lot of controversy between, or some people say, well, it's not estrogen that causes it, it's the hormonal therapy, the synthetic estrogen that causes it. I'm not going to go into all this, but we do know that there is a hormonal component in many cancers. And in fact, some cancers actually secrete hormones, like some lung cancers secrete hormones. So again, the endocrine system plays a key role in all these things. Let's talk about aging. We know also that the whole aging process is because of two things: continual free radical damage and silent inflammation. And we've talked in detail about these two topics in our other webinars. But the thing is this: wherever you have a cell in the human body, wherever you have a cell in the human body, it is liable to be damaged by free radicals. And over a period of time, as long as you're on this earth, as long as you're under the blue dome of heaven, you will be assailed by free radicals. And that continual exposure will eventually take you to the grave, some way or the other. And by the way, Terry, do you know what's the mortality rate over there in California?
I don't know.
Well, I know over here. I know what it is over here. Steve, what about you?
I don't pay attention. I pay attention to the good, happy stuff.
All right. I know you do. Bottom line, mortality rate is 100%.
Oh.
Everybody's gonna die. I know that's pretty morbid, but somewhere or other, everybody's gonna die. And one of the things that the key things that is causing this slow decline is, of course, free radical damage. What we can do, other than living forever, which is not going to happen in time. Well, I'm not going to talk about that. But what we can do is affect or influence the way we go. So we can influence that by our diet and our lifestyle. So we just wear out rather than go down with disease, with our bodies riddled with disease. And the key to that is a good endocrine system, which also helps to support protection against free radicals. So remember, some hormones are extremely powerful antioxidants. Estradiol, for instance, which is an estrogen, we both have them, and both men and women have estradiol. Estradiol, they found it to be 1,000 times, in some cases, more powerful than vitamins C and E combined. Both vitamin C and E are among the top antioxidants in the human antioxidants that Dr. Lester Packard talks about, and they found out that this estradiol is much more powerful than the two of them combined. And they found out that estradiol is extremely important, especially as an antioxidant in the brain, to protect against damage in the brain. And that's why as estradiol diminishes, you find people tend to be more prone to having degenerative conditions like Alzheimer's disease. Okay, silent inflammation again. That's so menopause really is as a result of declining levels of hormones and also as a result of the lack of balance in the hormones. Because, again, like Dr. Steve said, it's not just the absolute values of these hormones, it's the interaction between, let's say, estrogen and progesterone, for instance. If that balance is not maintained, you would have trouble. Symptoms would include hot flashes, of course, and forgetfulness, distress, pains here and there. So cessation, and number 3 there, cessation of progesterone production. Okay, I'm just going to jump through these. You can get the notes or the handouts. Consequences of this decreased estrogen, there you have them there. Men also have the equivalent of the menopause. They don't talk about them too much, but andropause, which is a guy thing, is, as a matter of fact, some men actually have hot flashes, right, Dr. Steve?
Yes, I know. I have a pamphlet in my office that says men have hormones too. Because a lot of times we just think women are the ones that need to be concerned about hormones, but when you have men that have imbalances, you start to get a growth of breast tissue and things like this, that you get all kinds of weird things happening, the hot flashes, the irritability, the not being able to sleep. And so, yeah, it's very important for both men and women to have that balance.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that just brings us back to the whole mind-body interaction. The key is always not to, I mean, you can go to your doctor and you can get these hormones to help where you're lacking, but you have to do your part in ensuring that these systems are strong and they work better. And we're going to just give you a few pointers to that. But before then, we have a note on the different toxins that actually affect the different parts of this PNI, the brain, the nervous system, the endocrine system, and the immune system. And a lot of the new things the technologies that we're coming out with that make things cheaper and more convenient also come with a price in terms of damage to our bodies. And so you have to be aware of those things too. Here's a list of the disruptive chemicals, disruptive foods. High fructose corn syrup is in everything, everything. And so who's going to avoid taking some of these things? So therefore, it does make sense to be able to know how to protect yourself. Lots of kids, they're finding out, especially girls, having menstruation at very early periods, early times, as early as 8 or 9 years of age. And some of the people are tracing this back to things like white chicken breast, which is stocked with estrogens and steroids. Of course, the livestock farmers use these steroids to stimulate and accelerate growth of these chickens so they can be out in time and they can make money on them. Again, that comes at a price. So people need to be aware of that. There are, of course, emotional toxins, and these are the big three: anger, anxiety, and depression. Damaging, very, very damaging to the body. Consequences of a disturbed endocrine balance, in one word, mayhem. I'm just going to leave it there, okay? I don't want to get in trouble. But I have... Sherry, you want to say something?
You're just so wise.
I know, so wise. Okay. All right. Moving right along. What can you do? Because really, the whole idea behind these webinars is for you to see the problem, see what you need to do. And the basis, our foundational principle is that your body has its own intelligence. It wants to be well, whether you want it to do or not. Whether you want it to be, whether you want to survive or not, your body is designed, created, evolved, whatever you want to choose it. Whatever way you want to choose it. Your body is framed so as to do everything within its power to attain that end. Knowing this, knowing that your body wants to be healthy, and knowing that hopefully you want to be healthy, now you need to know what it takes to support your body. And the principle is build strength. Okay, all together now. Let's say that together. 1, 2, go. Build strength. All right. Now, okay, that was sloppy. Let's try it again. 1. Okay, on 3. 1, 2, 3. Build strength. Oh, guys, I should send you guys to the Army or something to get you all whipped up in shape. Okay. Build strength. That's what we need to do. On a day-to-day basis, that should be the philosophy that you should have. Everybody listening should have the philosophy that it doesn't matter whether I'm healthy, whether I feel good or not, or whether everybody thinks I'm wonderful or not. It is my responsibility, day in, day out, to give my body what it takes to be healthy and strong, regardless of how you feel, okay? So, and here are the 4 principles that we always talk about. It starts with the mind and the emotions, your diet, exercise, lifestyle, and of course, you need to know how to navigate the healthcare system. And so you need to know how questions to ask. The underlying principle is that the human body heals itself, and proper nutrition provides the resources to accomplish that task. And this is one of the legends in the whole field of nutrition. And I think he knows what he's talking about. So the question is, if you're having pain, if you're having discomfort, it must mean that somewhere along the way your body has failed to do what it was meant to do, which is your body was meant to heal itself. So if your body has failed to do what to heal itself, it must mean, according to this quote, that your body probably has not been given the tools and the resources and the nutrition to accomplish that task. And so let's see what the tools are. We talk about 7 or 8 different food groups, and we're just going to zap through these real quick. Essential vitamins and minerals. Of course, all cells need essential vitamins and minerals. We are not getting enough in food. Even MDs concede that, and therefore they recommend that we take multivitamin supplements. The problem is they stop there, and they say everything else is unnecessary. That is not true anymore. In each of the 7 or 8 different food groups, we are lacking, especially in this country. And there's a lot that has a lot to do with farming methods, agriculture, the processing techniques, everything. And we're not going to go into that much. Amino acids. Well, let me just say this real quick. For diabetics, because of the excessive urination, that's one of the hallmarks of diabetes. Diabetics lose a lot of, especially the water-soluble vitamins. And what are they? Vitamin C, the B vitamins, the energy vitamins are lost a lot more in diabetics because of the frequency of urination. Also, diabetics especially need to have good supplementation with the B vitamins and the C vitamins. Just basically, you need to have a good supply of all these things. Of course, diabetics also need chromium because chromium works with insulin to drive glucose into the cell. Our recommendation to you is to get a very high quality food matrix-based vitamin mineral supplements, which can be absorbed into your system quickly. Now, some juices also have some really great high quality vitamin mineral supplements too. So it would behoove you to do your due diligence to search for these things. Amino acids, we just mentioned that earlier on in the webinar, that most hormones, the large majority of hormones are made up of amino acids, and so therefore you do need that. Fatty acids, of course, for the cell membranes, all cell membranes, including the cells in the endocrine system, are made up of fatty acids, and therefore you need to have supplemented those. Omega-3s are especially important. We are lacking in our diet on omega-3s. We mentioned antioxidants. Fiber, very, very important because it helps to maintain a healthy digestive tract. And we say over and over and over again that a healthy digestive tract means a healthy immune system. 70% of your immune cells are, believe it or not, 70% of your immune cells are in the digestive tract. In some cases, people say up to 80% is in the digestive tract. So fiber is extremely important for helping to make the digestive tract healthy, and in some cases also, some fibers actually feed the good bacteria in our gut, and good bacteria are very, very important for our health. Glyconutrients for cell-to-cell communication, very, very important phytochemicals for antioxidants and for anti-inflammatories. Lots of these juices that are coming out now have these phytochemicals that help to provide those very large amounts of anti-inflammatories and antioxidants. Phytosterols, of course, are for glandular function and plant hormones. Why are phytosterols important? Because they supply the basic building blocks for the steroid hormones, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. Here's the thing, folks. We want to give the body not the finished product as much as we want to give the body the building blocks. Because, again, the body has its own intelligence. Your body knows how best to use the building blocks and create whatever is lacking. If you just come from the outside and just load your body with estrogen or progesterone, for instance, your body is belabored with this load and has to try and balance things out, so it's spending a lot of energy trying to seek that balance. But if you give it the building blocks, well, it takes what it needs and it discharges what it doesn't need. And so you're aiding your body more than you're burdening it. So very, very important to get phytosterols, and there's some good supplements that contain them. Dioscorea bellosa is a wild yam, Mexican wild yam, which has some really good amounts of these phytosterols in them. Let's move on. Glyconutritionals, I have to talk about this because it just plays a huge role, especially in what we're talking about here. There are about 8 sugars which we refer to as glyconutritionals, and these sugars play a huge role in several things, from cell-to-cell communication to the immune system function to just basically the general well-being of the cell. And if you remember the quote we said at the beginning, I mean, we mentioned things like constant communication has to go on. The messages must be sent via nerves, also via the bloodstream in the form of hormones, local signaling molecules. Whether it's through the nerves, via neurotransmitters, or by hormones, or just by local signaling molecules, whatever way impulses are sent, whatever way information is sent, it is always, always, always received by way of certain things in the cell called cell receptors. And those are these things sticking out of the membrane. This is actually the membrane of a cell. It's actually meant to be this large circular thing. They are all these structures sticking out of the cell, and these structures are made up of proteins. That blue part is made up of protein or a lipid, and these branches you're seeing on the top are made up of combinations of those 8 sugars that we just mentioned. Without these 8 sugars, which act as your sensory organs in the cell, without those 8 sugars, your cell would not be able to function because it would not be able to receive information. And information is critical for life. So there you have it again. I mean, the whole system is maintained, and it's allowed for these arrows to flow on without interruption and disturbance. Information must be sent and received, and glyconutritionals play a huge role in that whole process.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Dr. David. And of course, I lecture on this, as you do, all over North America. And as a chiropractor, one of the things that I wanted to point out, I wrote a chapter a few years ago in a book called Structure and Function. And of course, we know that also a big part of that is, I call it the hardwiring. What you just did such a great job in encapsulating these important sugars in these neurohormonal connections, and that's the cellular communication. That's the wireless system in our body, and it's the biochemical aspect that our cells need, and the humoral, the hormonal system that travels in the bloodstream, and it also travels from cell to cell in the brain. We also need, as a chiropractor, I got to say this, we need that hardwiring, and that's where the central nervous system, brain, and spinal cord connect directly with those tissues, including the skin. We got a lot of nerve endings on the skin as well. And we got a lot of nerve endings internally as well. So that's that hardwiring component, and so I had to get that in there. My chiropractic soul demanded equal. Not equal time, because I know this is your show, but I had to say that. But yeah, it's both hardwiring and soft wiring, the software rather, or the system, the Microsoft, which is the glyconutrients. That really literally runs the cellular communication system.
Right. I like the way you brought that up. I mean, there's the software, I've forgotten how he mentioned it, but yeah, that's what it really was. This is software that's the intelligence of the system. The hardware could be the genes and the proteins, but the software and how the whole flow happens between cells, yes, that's the glyconutritional to play a huge role in that. And really, when you think about it, the key, if you were to ask me the secret to life, I would say movement movement is the secret to life, whether it's the movement of information from one cell to the other, or whether it's the immune cells mounting an attack against an invader, or whether it's the brain doing stuff. I mean, it's the secret to life. If you want to find out whether a person is dead, what do? You is alive or dead? You want to feel his pulse, of course. You want to feel whether something is moving, whether it's losing weight. Oprah had found this out the hard way. I mean, she had all the money in the world, but it was only until she committed to exercising six times at least a week. That's when she began to lose weight and keep the weight off. It was movement that was the key. And so really the secret to life is movement. And so when it comes to the endocrine system that we're talking about today, it's extremely important, especially as you grow older, to be able to discipline yourself, to either go to the gym or have a gym in your house or some good equipment in your house where you're forced to move your muscles, move your body, because that helps to revive the endocrine system. We know that people who go into weights, but they've done study after study of this, where people in their 70s and 80s are taken on for 6 months. They're taken on to extensive weight training exercises, mindset training exercises, and they found out that after that period of time, those same people were having fitness levels, hormonal levels of people in their 30s and 40s. Just after 6 months of training, and we're talking about old people. We're talking about people who had stopped moving around for like 30 years, and yet they got them together and they got them moving, they got them exercising. Growth hormones went up, their testosterone levels went up, their estrogen levels went up, and they suddenly were revived, they were rejuvenated, and that was because they moved. So that's a call to action we really want to encourage people to do. Again, let's just summarize basically the things that we're talking about. Pursue mind health, antioxidants, hormonal building blocks, glyconutritional, exercise, build muscles. And in some cases, of course, you need the help of the medical establishment to help put these things back in place. Sometimes you can't do it on your own, even with all the best nutritional supplements. And while you're doing these nutritional supplements, you check with the doctor, check your levels, and just make sure that you're covering all the bases. I just want to end with a few notes on the number one: pursue mind health. And there's a term called finding your bliss, which was coined by Joseph Campbell, who was the mentor to George Lucas, who did the movie Star Wars franchise, the most successful franchise in history, movie franchise in history, and he was George Lucas's mentor. Anyway, this quote is from Viktor Frankl, world-renowned psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, Jewish guy. He saw these things firsthand, so he knows what he's talking about. He found out that the people who had something to look forward to in the camps, the concentration camps, they had something to look forward to, whether it was their wife or whether they wanted to see their kids again or whether they wanted to go play golf or they wanted to get back to their practice as architects, whatever it was. Those that had something to look forward to, they were the ones who survived. Those who didn't, well, they didn't survive. And so he came up with this now very famous statement: our fundamental drive, the motivational engine that powers human existence, is the pursuit of meaning. We are made for meaning. Our lives have to have a meaning. We have to have something we're looking for. We have to be involved in fields or careers or activities that strengthen, that make us more of who we are, that make us better people, that make us better servants to humanity, that help us to help others in a better way, that go along with our gifts and our talents. And really, Dr. Steve, my heart's cry, as far back as I can remember, is to really help people find out what it is that they were designed for, what they were meant to, what they were put on this earth for. Because in my estimation, everything else is colored bubbles. Everything else is colored bubbles, whether it's health or money or business, whatever it is. I think the truly happy person is a person who is doing things that are of value to him and that make a difference in other people's lives.
Absolutely, and I can't agree more. And I see people all the time that come in. They're so stressed, and they're on the hamster wheel. You know, they've got this go, push, and they don't know where they're going. They really don't have that purpose-filled life, and they're, you know, I think we all want to be part of something bigger than ourselves, and we want to be part of some type of movement that gives us more meaning. And I've read Viktor Frankl's book and Man's Search for Meaning. It's an incredible book. You see a guy that was in the worst conditions known to man, and you think that the person would come out of that. Not many people walked out of the concentration camps, and he said the people that kept their mind and kept their purpose and kept a realistic attitude survived, and it's incredible. I won't give away the story, because if you get a chance to read that book, Man's Search for Meaning, go buy that book. It's incredible. But I think you're right. People that are the happiest are the ones that I think get together like people that are on this call, that people that get together on a regular basis, whether it's a church or a synagogue or some place that they can get together with people of like mind and just raise everybody else up, because when you get that energy, and it's really the energy of the heart and caring for other people.
Right.
They say that a rising tide raises all ships, and so when you get around these people of like mind, it really everything changes, especially when you get around people that have that common purpose. I think that Margaret Mead said it right, that never underestimate a small group of like-minded people, because that can change the world. In fact, that's the only thing that ever has changed the world.
Right. Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And really, what does it have to do with the endocrine system? Well, it has everything to do with the endocrine system. Everything. Because remember our whole picture. I mean, if your mind is at peace, well, that translates to the brain, it translates to the endocrine system, translates to the immune system. It kind of gets things in balance. It gets things in alignment. Once you are involved in those things that are meaningful to you, it does things for you that nothing else can. Be it a super drug, a super supplement, or a super duper amount of money. It does things for you that nothing else can. And so we're putting together studies to help people really find out what they're doing for them, how to find their purpose and find meaning in life. And I like this quote too from Braveheart. Everyone dies, but not everyone truly lives. Okay, well, I'm done. Thanks, Dr. Steve. Do we have any questions on this?
Yes, there are a couple of questions. Let me see. At the beginning, you talked about melatonin, and somebody was wondering if, like, some people sleep with their TVs on at night, and they're wondering if that affects your melatonin.
Absolutely. Turn it off. You don't even you don't need to be having the TV on more than 2 hours a day, folks. Really, that's really bad news. There's studies that have been going on, and they show that excessive TV watching actually does damage to your body. It diminishes, it raises your stress levels, affects your immune system. Dr. Steve, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, not only is the electromagnetic field not good for our systems, our immune systems, and so on, but when you start disrupting sleep patterns, I do this for a couple of reasons. I say get the TV out of the bedroom, because then you're going to get into the habit of, oh, now it's time to watch TV. Plus, you're going to be laying in weird postures, propping your head up. That's not good for your neck or your spine. So get it out. Yeah, turn it off. You don't need that TV.
Yeah, you really don't. You really don't. Besides, the light coming from the TV affects your melatonin secretion too.
Somebody was asking to see the PNI slide again, but also a question about chromium. What does chromium do for diabetics? Please repeat. Did you mention something about that?
Yeah, I did. One of the things that we know is that chromium helps in the formation of insulin, and also, hang on, let me just make sure I got the slide right. Okay, there you go. It makes the formation of insulin and also helps insulin to work better. All right, probably should go back to that slide again.
Yeah, that chromium is the glucose tolerance factor. Chromium insulin will not work without chromium being present.
Mm.
Right.
And Dr. Steve, we've had a few people asking for the names of those books again. If you could type them in the chat box and send them to everybody, that'd be great.
Well, I was trying to find that. You gave, and so I think I'm not sure if I lost my chat box because I was looking through and I couldn't find it. I was trying to go to the oh, there it is. Okay, got it.
And if there's a little drop-down arrow, and you can do send to the entire audience.
Got it. Okay, I'll do it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I was going to say this real quick. Again, think of this as just a quarter or a fifth of a cell. A cell is a really round thing. Insulin has to, for glucose, for the cell taking glucose, which is vital for energy in the cell. For the cell taking glucose, insulin has to act on the receptors. What insulin does is it latches onto the receptor and then makes the receptor able to receive glucose into the cell. We have and I think it was in our fat loss, or was it 1 or 2 that we actually showed pictures of how this whole thing works. So you can get the handouts from that. So insulin kind of latches on and makes the cell taking glucose. Well, chromium, you can't see chromium, but it has the chromium and insulin that will help prepare the receptor to receive glucose into the cell.
Is chromium something everybody should be taking?
It's advisable because they found out that most people or most diets are deficient in chromium. So yes, it is absolutely advisable to take. It's because the mineral, you don't want to just take a separate chromium supplement. You want to take a multivitamin that has good amounts of chromium and the other nutrients that and vitamins and minerals that we're lacking in a food-based matrix. Please remember that, a food-based matrix. You don't want those multivitamins that are synthesized in the lab. In other words, they take this chemical and take that chemical and then bind them together and hopefully it's going to work. Those notoriously are not as well absorbed in your digestive tract as if it were in a food-based matrix. Some juices actually attain to that, and some pills actually attain that, but there are very few, and they are more expensive than what you would find at your local store, for instance.
Is there chromium in brewer's yeast?
Dr. Steve?
I believe there is. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Also, could you show us the slide again that shows the list of the symptoms of hormonal imbalance? The symptoms of imbalance. Thank you.
I'll have to find that. Okay, well, why don't we go on to something else while we're looking at that?
Also, you keep mentioning that vitamins need to be in a food-based matrix. How do we know if your vitamin is in a food-based matrix? Because
the company is going to tell you. If the company doesn't tell you it's a food-based matrix, well, then you automatically you X that and keep looking for a company that tells you it's in a food-based matrix. When you find a company that tells you, then you can begin to research to find out if it is actually true what they are saying. And so Steve, how do we confirm that this is food-based matrix? I mean, how do you?
Yeah, like I always ask. I'm asking people all the time, what are they taking? Where is it coming from? And what's the quality control? Is it a GMP, good manufacturing practice? Company that follows those rules of GMPs. Is it standardized? Those are all questions that you need to ask, because if it's not, following good manufacturing practices. A lot of these companies fall short of that, and they just say, oh, we're good enough, or we don't have to do that. The law doesn't say we have to right now. Well, I'd stay away from those guys. Standardization, that's very rare these days, especially with multivitamins, and because some crops are pretty good, and if they don't have them in a standardized form, then you're going to find there's going to be variation in the concentration and the levels, and that's the biggest problem. One of the biggest problems in the vitamin nutrition industry is that these people will say there's this on the label, and when you actually go to test it, it's not. And the FDA is going to start coming down pretty quick. And if the company's not up to standards in terms of good manufacturing practices, they're going to be gone.
Right. And folks, one of the things I want to be careful about saying this. I want to say this before. I'll say this first. If you are invited to these webinars by someone else who is trying to introduce you to a nutritional supplement, and we would strongly suggest that you get back with the person who recommended these webinars to you. We're not in the business of stealing or luring people in a different direction. However, if you just happen to stumble upon these webinars and you don't have anybody to guide you, well, one of the things we do is to help direct you to where you can get good quality supplements. So you can contact us after the call, after the webinar, and we'll be sure to direct you to someone or someplace, a company that has, if it's a food-based vitamin mineral, for example, they are looking for. We do know companies that provide that, so we can help shorten your search time. But again, if you had someone else who suggested, who introduced you to the webinars, to get back with them first. And of course, you can contact us. If you registered for these webinars, you will probably be getting a couple of emails after this call in addition, and you can always press the reply button and it will come back to us.
That's right. Boy, we're getting already 7:30 here in Pacific. How about one last question? You talked earlier about the BMI. Somebody was asking what about the BMR, the basal metabolic rate, and how does that relate to BMI?
BMI stands for Body Mass Index. Basal metabolic rate talks about, it refers to your metabolism. They are not necessarily related. However, if your metabolic rate is well primed and it's working, you have a good metabolic rate, then chances are good that your body mass index, or your amount of fat in your body, will be lower. People who are fat and obese are notoriously have a low BMR. Steve?
Yeah, and I think that relates to Dr. Broda Barnes that wrote a book about the thyroid and a lot of the basal thermometers to measure, under underarm temperatures. And I don't know how accurate it is, but it's one way of being able to measure your metabolism. And if you do it on a consistent basis, and women need to do it at a time when it's not the ovulation time period or time when they're menstruating, in between there. And so there's a chart, you can just chart yourself, and it's 1 degree lower than oral temperature typically is what's normal for basal metabolic rate temperature. So if you're hypothyroid or hyper, then that rate is going to be typically higher or lower, typically lower with hypothyroidism. And so 97.6 is typically the normal level, and if you're below that consistently over a period of 5, 6, 7 days, and you got to get it while you're still in bed. You cannot be up and moving around because that's going to raise your body temperature. So that's typically what we refer to when they refer to the basal metabolic rate.
Wow, that's great information.
Great stuff.
Just one last reminder, that chart, David, that you made that's really great, that explains the different hormones and things. For everybody, if you want, there's a link on our homepage. You can just click on that and it'll bring up another page. You can just print that out.
Great. Well, Sherry, again, thank you. I know you've had a really busy day, and I know you've had meetings and all that, so thanks for helping out tonight.
My pleasure.
And Dr. Steve, man, what a difference you've made on this webinar. Thank you so much again for joining us on the webinar.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks, Sherry. You, too, for being there. And Dr. David, I can't tell you, every time I see and see, look at the amount of information you put out is just incredible. And an hour and a half is a short time. It just flies right by. So glad to be here and glad to contribute. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, we appreciate you. And folks, thank you again for hanging with us, and hopefully you've learned a few things. And we'll be sending out information soon on next webinars. So if we don't see you before then, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. God bless. Yes. Have a great weekend.
Have a nice Thanksgiving. Good night.
Night.